Welcome to the Love the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former Super Bowl winning scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. He is also the pre- and post-game co-host of the Cowboys Radio Network. Brian, before we jump into Cowboys talk and some of the off-season discussion, anything of interest to you from this past weekend? We've got a 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl on deck. Any thoughts on how things shook out in the conference championships?
Man, I'll tell you what, fine players on all four teams. It's unfortunate for the Ravens. Their quarterback didn't play particularly well. Their offensive coordinator had trouble in that game. Their defensive coordinator didn't really have a great plan for what Mahomes was able to do. But then you're learning about Pat Mahomes is that regardless of who he has, he's going to find a way to get the job done. Feel terrible for the Lions fans. And I don't, all year long, that's who they've been, with the way that they play, with the way that their coach manages the game. Unfortunately, it's going to come down to those fourth down plays. But, the Lions played really well all year. And the 49ers are tough. They're a resilient team. The last couple of weeks that they've come back, Green Bay, and then now this game, 17 points down. So, I think we're going to have an outstanding Super Bowl matchup. Kansas City is continually proves that they're a team that everybody talked about. They can only win at home. Well, they've won on the road. Their road to the Super Bowl, it kind of reminds me of the road to the Super Bowl, say the 2007 Giants, where they had to go through Tampa, Dallas, and Green Bay to get to the Super Bowl and then beat New England. It's very resilient football teams, very tough football teams. It just shows you the magnitude of the game when your star players don't play at their absolute best, what could happen to you. And I think it happened to them. It happened to those teams that lost yesterday. But the stars, look at Kelsey, the way he played at, Kansas City. They were, I think the metrics told me, the metrics told me he was 7 of 7 versus the safeties for the Ravens. When you looked at targets to receptions, I think it was 79 yards, 1 touchdown. 7 of 7. That's what you got to do. You got to go out there in games like that where, you knew it was going to be tough. Kansas City had a really nice plan. The way Andy called the game, the way the quarterback executed, very deserving of being in the Super Bowl once again.
So not to rehash any bad feelings for Cowboys fans. Yeah. But I am curious, one of the things that we had discussed on Monday morning on 105 through the Fan was this idea of, do you watch those games? Do you watch that Detroit-San Francisco game, which San Francisco, very resilient, comes back, Detroit with just an awful collapse.
Yes.
But do you watch that and do you say, oh, man, this San Francisco team may have been a little bit more vulnerable than we thought? Or do you look at it from the other side and say, Detroit was probably going to smack you in the mouth coming back for some revenge a couple weeks later?
I think that Detroit coming back to Dallas would have always been a really interesting storyline. But they would have had to prove, Dallas beats Green Bay, then we continue to ride the narrative of Dallas playing well at home and being a tough team to beat at home. And Green Bay Detroit would have had to deal with that. I feel like, though, that to me, San Francisco now is a different team than it was in week 5.
Yeah.
And I think you're starting to see that there's things that they do have issues with. If you can run the ball on, well enough, San Francisco has had some problems. When Dallas played them in week 5, it's like San Francisco wasn't giving up yards. Now but they've got, Steve Wilkes has done a great job with the defense and, and the way that they mix their coverages. They move Bosa around. I mean, Penny Sewell, I think there were 46 drop back pass situations in that game. He didn't give up a pressure. He didn't give up anything. And so, but what they do, incredible. They move Bosa around to try and hunt spots, and they do, and that's what you got to have. And I think the San Francisco 49ers at home were a beatable team. You know, I mean, you look at what Green Bay did to them the week before. They were, Green Bay had them on the ropes, but they didn't lose the game. They did not lose either game. And to their credit, that's what you have to have. That's why they deserve to be in the Super Bowl. But boy, I'd love to have seen Dallas have that opportunity. I'd love to have seen them beat Green Bay, then beat Detroit, and then go take a crack at San Francisco. You know, that Detroit team's tough, man. That is a tough team to deal with. You know, when you look at the way they play, that offensive line, I mean, is really, really, really good.
Yeah, and they run the ball just really impressively. Yeah. Ben Johnson does a great job.
He does.
Drawing that stuff up. That's why he's in all likelihood going to get a head coaching opportunity during this cycle. And that's the thing. And we'll talk next segment a little bit about the Cowboys' approach to the running game. But that is the one thing that gives me a little pause and makes me say, I don't know if you can take advantage of San Francisco the same way that Detroit did, because I just don't know that
you don't run the ball well
like
enough.
That.
You don't run the ball. But it gave week 5, the Cowboys weren't good enough to beat that team. You know? And I'm not saying they would have been good enough to beat him in a championship game, but San Francisco looks like a different team the last couple of weeks. They don't look like that. Now, when you watch guys, and the reason why they trade for a guy like McCaffrey, they get in a situation where like half of his runs, he had 20 runs, half of his runs were against stack box. His most productive runs in the game were when they had stack box. That's 8 men or more in a box playing run defense. 2 touchdowns, 50-something. I mean, that's what you got to have. You got to, when it's the end of the game or you're trying to get back in the game, that ability, that threat, you know? And the Cowboys don't have that. They don't have that ability to hand the ball to somebody in stack box and have them just either kill the game or get you back in the game.
Yeah, no, I think that's and that's something that clearly Mike McCarthy wanted to have. He talked about it during the offseason that was something that he really wanted. It's just it obviously didn't work out that way. You're the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say. And look, they had every intention, I think, to have an effective running game. It was not in the cards for them. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about that next segment. A little bit of coaching news really quickly, Brian. Dan Quinn, we're still waiting to find out what's going to happen on that front.
That's going to get done this week. That's going to get done this week, Bobby.
Do you think he gets the Seattle job?
I don't know which job he's going to get, because now you've got guys like Adam Schefter, who I have a lot of respect for, is talking about, well, it's not a foregone conclusion that Ben Johnson's going to get that commander's job. You know?
Yeah.
I think Dan Quinn, I think there's the 2 possibilities. We'll see what happens in Seattle. You know, we'll see what happens with McDonald interviewing in Seattle now. You know, that one will be interesting to see what direction John Snyder goes. But when guys like Adam Schefter are saying, well, keep an eye on this one. Don't I mean, it's not done deal, but it's going to get done this week, because what my experience has been, the NFL does not want you breaking news during Super Bowl week.
Sure.
They don't want you doing that. You know, it's like all these interviews and stuff. They didn't want people talking about these interviews when championship weekend was going on. They do not want you taking away from what's going on with the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So these interviews, I think when these second interviews are happening now, I think we're going to see some results in the next, say, Thursday, Friday, and then even into when the teams get into Las Vegas, then you'll start. I don't think anybody's going to carry this thing into Super Bowl week. I think you're going to have an understanding of some. I think the last 2 jobs are going to be filled by the time we get to teams landing in Las Vegas.
Best guess, next Monday, who is employing Dan Quinn?
I'm going to say that that's tough, because I feel like that, man, I mean, John Snyder was my was my intern in Green Bay, and I can't get a word out of him. I mean, I just can't even. I want to say that Dan Quinn's going to be back with the Dallas Cowboys.
That's the way I'm leaning right now.
Yeah,
I think I'm leaning that direction. I think that what that might do is Adden Dirty has gotten a couple interview requests. The defensive line coach, the Rams have requested to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons with Raheem Morris, the Packers. Look, this was something that I can't remember if we talked about it. I know I talked about it last week on The Fan, but this is something that when you look at Dave Canales getting the job in Carolina, or you look at Raheem Morris getting it in Atlanta, a lot of times those guys, especially when you're a young head coach, Canales a first-time head coach, Raheem Morris not having been a head coach in a decade, a lot of times you're just going to go based off of connections that you have and people that you know. So it makes sense that Canales reaches out and they have a request in for Will Harriger, who the Cowboys added to their staff last year as an offensive assistant. He had been at USC with Caleb Williams, but he was in Seattle where Canales was there. Mm-hmm. It made sense that Raheem Morris, having coached with Adden Dirty, would say, hey, let's give him a call. That's somebody that we like, and that's somebody that's really well liked across the league. So yes. I agree. I think Quinn most likely back, not a slam dunk, but I would say most likely he's back. And I think that because growth is capped here for Adden Dirty, I would not be surprised if Adden Dirty takes a job this offseason. And so they very well may have a defensive line opening, because he's an impressive coach. The guys really, really like him, and he's thought really well of across the league. And so I think that's kind of where we're heading. But like you say, we should have an answer soon.
He's a great teacher. He really, really is a great teacher. And, you can see that obviously that Dan has been a big influence on him. And the players, as you mentioned, absolutely love him and his style and, the hands-on approach and the way he's able to communicate. So, yeah, they very well could be. Maybe they're not going to be hunting a defensive coordinator, but they might be hunting a defensive line coach.
You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, so we referenced a little bit the running game, and Michael Gelkin, I thought, had a really good article over at the Dallas Morning News. And it's something that speaks to this idea of, okay, what were the Cowboys... Did the Cowboys go into the negotiations with Tony Pollard last year with the best of intentions? When they tagged him, did they have any real conviction about bringing him back long term, or was it, hey, we need a bridge here to kind of just get through some things and do so like that? It reads like, according to Michael Gelkin's article, that it was more about just trying to get by. He has the line here that finishes up the article where he's referencing Pollard as a potential reunion. He says, while Dallas could be amenable for a reunion at the right price, this is clearly a new day for the future at the running back position, one in which, at least for the next few years, high-priced contracts are reserved for other positions on the roster. That is not Michael Gelkin just, no. Hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. That's something that he's probably worked really hard to get the idea that that's a position that they're taking within the building right now.
Right.
So with that in mind, Brian, looking at this running game, what is your easiest fix for this? What is your investment for fixing this? Is your investment
the center?
Hey, I was going to say, is it center?
Yeah, it's the center, and it's the center, and and hope is a terrible thing to have. Well, I shouldn't say that. Sounds terrible.
Oh, I get totally what you mean. Yeah. Hope, you don't want to hold and hope.
You want to, excuse me, you're holding hope that your right tackle, his health has improved, that he's going to have an off season of working out and working with Duke and others and getting himself back to the level that he was playing pre-knee injury. They need to address the center. They need to address the center. And I mean, you watch the teams that are playing in the championship, and you watch, say, the Final Four teams. You watch a Creed Humphrey play. You get it. You understand. Frank Ragnow playing. You get it. You see what guys can do. Our guy at the Ravens. I know the Ravens didn't run the ball.
Linderbaum.
Linderbaum. They didn't even try and run the ball. But you get it. When the Dallas Cowboys were good, and I'm talking about the the 2016 when Dak first came into the league. You look at Ron Leary, you look at Tyron Smith, you look at Zach Martin, you look at Doug Free, but the guy that really to me was that difference maker guy, Travis Frederick. That was the guy. That was the guy that got second level blocks, got the down blocks, got the seal blocks, got the reach blocks. That was the guy that was really doing a lot for your offense. And, Zeke helped. Zeke was a tremendous rookie runner, no question. But there was some physicality to which they played, and they need to get back to that. They need to get back to that, being able to control the middle of a defense and not be a problem where they don't get those second level blocks, where they don't get the reach blocks, where they don't, they can't afford that anymore in the running game. So to me, the first thing I fix is the center. Then I work as hard to get my right tackle as healthy as possible. I make sure that my health of my right guard, who's a veteran, and my left tackle, if it's Tyron Smith, I make sure I understand their practice reps and stuff like that. I get that. I think Tyler Smith is going to continue to be a damn good left guard. They need to fix the center. To me, that's it. And then you look at the running backs, and we talked about this on the draft show last week when we had Dane Brugler in. Where's the run? Dane Brugler says it's not a first-round running back. Okay, yeah, cool. Brooks, who I looked at from University of Texas, nice player.
Coming off an injury.
Knee. Can you deal with that? Blake Corum, ton of carries at Michigan. Stayed around an extra year.
Another guy with a history of knee.
Another guy there. So you've got to figure this out with this running game, with this, whether it's the Notre Dame kid or, you got to figure it out with the back. But if you don't change the center or upgrade the center, then you get what you deserve. I don't care if you have Tony Dorsett or Walter Payton or whoever, it doesn't matter. You've got to get that center taken care of. So that's my fix. Now, I'm interested in, Bobby, I don't know if you've heard, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here.
Hit me.
James Campen came on the street from Carolina, the offensive line coach.
Mm-hmm.
Are we still, Mike Solari, are we still feeling good about Mike Solari? Does Mike Solari need to have, hey, let's pay for your contract and you can go fishing again kind of a thing? James Campen and Mike McCarthy have a big history together.
Yeah.
And I wonder, do you bring him on as an assistant to the assistant? Or
you have history with James Campen.
James Campen, when I started with the Green Bay Packers in 1992, was our center.
Yeah.
I like James Campen. Wonderful human being. But, you wonder, do they look at maybe the offensive line coach as something that could have gotten better, could have helped him in the running game?
That's very possible. Look, I mean, okay, so I don't know this with certainty. I would assume that Solari is under contract. I don't know for sure. I would assume he is generally
for 1 year more, right?
Yeah, generally assistant coaches are 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And so he's been here for a year now. I will say that I know that there are a lot of people in the building who like the way that he teaches and like the way that he cross-trains guys and keeps them prepared for every scenario to play across the line. So I do know that there's some – I don't know that they would naturally just say, oh, let's do this. But like you say,
James
it's a buddy.
Campen they went after. They tried to get James Campen and Carolina blocked the move.
Yeah. And so it's something that would definitely make some sense, even if it is just as an assistant. If it's somebody just coming in here to be an assistant offensive line coach or whatever else they have set up there, that absolutely could be the case. But yeah, I think that, there's support for Solari, I think for a lot of people, but when you've got an opportunity to bring in somebody that you've worked with before and you think really highly of, you may have to take that opportunity. Now, like you say, though, the suggestion I think is a good one, that maybe it's just they combo up on it. It's definitely something that's worth watching. So we've talked a lot about the offensive line, the running game. Do you think that, assuming Dowdle's out of contract, Pollard's out of contract, assuming those two go, what do you think the approach is for the Cowboys in terms of at the position? Do you think they felt like, hey, we kind of learned this year, we want to go back to the split back system, like we want two guys sharing the load? Or do you think they say, let's get a bell cow and let's get somebody else back behind to kind of change things up from time to time?
I think they're looking at depending on what happens with Pollard. Does Pollard get an opportunity to go somewhere else? Does Rico go somewhere? I think there's a place, and Skip Pete, I give Skip Pete, who's the running back coach with the Buccaneers, a lot of credit, because he's the one, and he's the one while he was here said, you can't let Tony Pollard be the only guy. He can't be the featured guy. I mean, he was adamant about that. So, could I envision him coming back, reduced money? Yes. I mean, look at the names of the running backs that are in the free agent market right now. Swift, Henry. I mean, there's several names.
Barkley.
Yeah, there are several names. Now, what's your budget? Are you willing to go? Are you willing to go? $5 million on a back. I mean, that's what it. Where's your number? I know on our show on the G-Bag Nation on 105.3 The Fan, we went through those, and my guys were all talking about like a $3 million budget. They were looking at, okay, $3 million budget. Maybe you stretch that budget if you can go get a guy like Henry, who's got 90 touchdowns in his career.
Yeah.
But maybe if you can get one of these veteran guys, and then you pair him with, say, Bucky Irvin from Oregon, or Trey Benson from Florida State. Maybe Estime from, I think I'm saying his name right, from Notre Dame. Hell, I watched this kid, Cody Schrader from Missouri, the SEC's leading rusher this year from Missouri.
Yeah.
Hell of a player. I mean, just catches the ball, runs over you. Trust me, if you watch Corey Schrader play from Missouri, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But to me, that's kind of where I mean, the names are, Allen from Wisconsin, Davis from Kentucky. There's several backs. Are they first round backs? No. But they're backs that if you pair them with a veteran guy, that you could probably make this thing work.
It's something definitely, I think, interesting to watch how they approach things in free agency, how they approach things in the draft. I think they definitely draft a running back. I think that's too. For sure. Yeah. I think that they probably I think Tyler Biotish is not returning.
No, I don't think so either.
And so I think that they, maybe they look to supplement with Hoffman, and then they, do they go draft somebody? There's not at least that I've seen personally, I don't think there's a Linderbaum type. I know, you've got different guys out there that people are trying to make into centers, like Graham Barton at Duke and different players like that. But it does make you wonder, okay, are you going to draft a center? Are you going to go sign a veteran free agent, let him compete with Brock Hoffman, or get TJ Bass to play center? There are just a lot of things that the Cowboys have to figure out right up the middle in terms of there at center and right behind the quarterback and at the running back position. And I think that they're going to need to have a clear line of thinking about this. And it all starts right now this week. I mean, it really started last week at the Shrine Bowl, but I mean, it starts this week as well, being in Mobile. And when, Jerry and Steven historically talk there's going to be a lot of messaging that I'm sure they'll have ready about their running game and how they want to change things.
Yeah, I think, though, that to me, I think where you're really, and you can correct me on this, Bobby, and I said it again on my show today, where we learn a lot about what the Cowboys are interested in doing, I think happens at the Combine.
Yes.
I think that's where we learn about what they're doing, what they're thinking about their football team.
Yeah. You can get some seeds this week.
Yes. You'll be kind of, well, we need to be a little bit better here, there, and there, whatever. Yeah. But when you'll really find out the direction, when we had the Jerry Buss visit, or you run into somebody, on the way over to Lucas Oil, Stadium. You run into somebody at a Starbucks or at 3 a.m.
St. Elmo's.
You run into somebody at 3 a.m. at Steak and Shake.
Yeah.
That's where you learn about this football team. I just, I'm looking at these centers and depending on where they fall, like to say the Powers Johnson kid from Oregon, probably a first-round player. I know in Dane Brugler's mock draft, he got to Miami at 22. It's right ahead of you. Cedric Van Pam, the Georgia kid, probably a third, fourth round type of a player. Zach Frazier from West Virginia, another guy, a little bit shorter, a little bit about 6'2" and a half, but super, super tough guy. Just you watch him throw guys around. I mean, there are some centers in this draft, and they kind of come at some different levels. So to me, if I'm the Cowboys, I feel like you can go and get Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon is a plug and play guy.
Yeah, he's good. So I actually watched him over the weekend. I think he's a good player, and I'd be interested in him at a certain point. I don't think there's a Linderbaum type here. I don't think there's that guy.
No, not that kind of athletic ability.
Sure, and Linderbaum, because of his positional value, was never going to go top 10. But like in a vacuum, he was a top 10 talent in that.
But he was short, and that's
right.
the thing. And
he weighed 290 or whatever.
Yeah, and the same thing can happen to Zach Frazier from West Virginia is, I think he's 310 pounds, but he's 6'2" and a half. I mean. But he's a powerful guy. Van Parn is the Georgia kid. He plays too upright, too straight-legged for me, But you mentioned the kid from Duke, what he potentially can do. Barton. Yeah. I mean, he's played center his freshman year at Duke. He's played all these positions at Duke. But I think they can find. I think. Dallas has done a really good job. If it's a first round, if they tag the guy as a first round lineman, they've been pretty plug and play there. It's when they get in the third, fourth, fifth round that they might tag a guy, and he's not necessarily that starter that you need. So, I think that's kind of a, that to me, when we're talking about the running game and we're talking about the offensive line, that's kind of where I would look to start. But I'm not going to force something there. I'm just not.
Yeah.
If the right guys there, go for it. If not, this team's proven to me that they can take their stack and go off their stack, and they're all right. I don't know. Mozzie might have been one of those. We've seen war room footage of that. Is that right? Footage.
Yeah, footage. Yeah, footage.
Of Will arguing about
Mozzie Smith, Matthew Bergeron, yeah.
There you go. And in all actuality, they probably should have taken the guard from from Florida. If you look at
Torrance,
Torrance, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, or Laporta.
Maybe Laporta. Although Ferguson was pretty good.
Yeah, Laporta. I'm telling you what. Give Mike McCarthy credit. I think him and Lunda Wells. I think I'm reporting that correctly. They were on board with Laporta. We were sitting there in the
Justin Stuckey, the
Justin Stuckey,
scout.
There you go.
Came into the
scouts. They do a nice job.
He came in and told us. Yeah, he came in and told us on day 3 on the draft show on DallasCowboys.com. He told us, he was like, it hurt a little to see it hurt a little bit to see Sam Laporta go. A lot of people were fans of his, and it proved correct when you see the way that he performed this year. You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag. Got several questions here for you that we can kick around. Like I said, very soon we need to do just a questions episode like we've done in the past, just to kind of give you guys a chance to run through everything. First question here, Brian, from Vegas Malone. Is there at any chance that Cooks and Gilmore want to return, or we'll just say will return? do you think Cooks and Gilmore potential return? If you had to pick one, which one are you picking? Just to kind of kick around those scenarios for a sec. I personally really love what Cooks did all this year. I think he's a tremendous route runner. Yeah. I love what he brings to the table. I really like Gilmore too. I do think Gilmore looked like he was less than what he's been in the past. Like if you're going to tell me which player looks like they've lost more of a step off of the top of their game, to me it's Gilmore. But I mean, I still think Gilmore's a good player. But I would, if you're going to make me pick one, I'm keeping Cooks.
Yeah, if you make me pick one, I'm keeping Cooks too. I kind of feel like this draft has some good corners in it. You know, some physical guys who can play man coverage, guys that they got the ball skills that the Cowboys kind of require their corners to be able to play with.
A lot of skinny corners again, though.
A lot of,
just like last year.
Yeah, like I said, that's that part of it's a little tough. You know, when you're looking at these corners, and I'm like going, okay, well, where's the weight on these guys? I know Chris Abrams-Drain from Missouri was a guy I watched. He's like 175-pound type of a guy. You just kind of go through those lists of those guys, and they're a little bit of a smaller,
which has become build. I mean that has become a thing the last couple of years. That was something last year. We talked about how, you remember that was a big discussion about
guy Forbes.
Emmanuel Forbes was a big discussion, but we just talked about how, man, there are a lot of these like 6'1", 180-pound corners like last year. And it just felt a little odd. And then you're kind of seeing, okay, well, this year you're getting, again, some guys who are 6 feet tall, 180, 6'1", 175. It's becoming a little bit more the norm. And I think it's something that, has, it's just interesting to see how that has kind of shifted in terms of these lankier corners.
Yeah, there's another kid, the two Missouri kids, Rakestraw. Have you, Ennis Rakestraw, there's another guy that's kind of long and rangy, but he doesn't have a lot of weight. I think he's 188, but that's not bad. But you just kind of, to me, the Alabama kids are the ones that have the more thickness to them that I've seen so far. When you start to look at their weight. I mean, you're sure you want 195, 200-pound guy that would be that type of guy that you would look at. But yeah, it's a kind of a little bit of a slighter group than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to get too diverted past that, but just for clarity, would you be okay bringing back Gilmore if it's not a choice, like it's not either or? Let's say Gilmore says, "Yeah, look, I'll come back 1 year, $8 million." Are you interested in that?
You know what?
And I have no idea what his market is. That may be way below it. I have
personally. I think I would move. Personally, I'd move.
Would you keep Lewis?
I would try and keep Lewis. But the thing about it is, though, man, I say I get rid of Gilmore, but then who's going to play outside? I think Bland is going to be able to play outside.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's a deal where Bland, to me, you can kick him into the slot and then find an outside guy.
It's where he started the year last year.
Yeah. That's kind of, I think, how I would look at things going forward.
Next question here from Mike. Which free agent linebacker would you rather pursue, Levante David or Patrick Queen? And let me guess. I think I can figure out which one you're going to pick, Brian.
Well, I love the LSU kid, but people will tell you that Patrick Queen didn't get better, only got better, or got,
improved because Roquan Smith was next.
When Roquan Smith showed up, all of a sudden Patrick Queen became a better player.
Sure.
So David's a really, they're both really good players. I think for the
Levante David's a good player, but Levante David's also getting up there.
Yeah,
because what is it? David's 30. I think he'll be 34 next year.
Yeah, I would probably see every time I'd say something about an LSU kid, everybody's like, "Oh, you're a homer" and all that.
Look, if it's David or Queen, I'm taking Queen. I'm taking Queen. I really like Patrick Queen. I'm trolling you, but I would fully welcome Patrick Queen on this football team.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
So that I mean that's it. Now, obviously, the other question here, we talk about linebackers potentially available in the draft. What are your thoughts? I know one guy that keeps getting a lot of questions thrown out about him, and somebody who was in Frisco this week, Edge Cooper from Texas A&M. Have you gotten a chance to watch him yet?
Yeah, I have. And, there's a guy that's in that 6'3", 230-pound range. You watch him play. I mean, he's got the ability to run people down, plays well at the point of attack. He's got the length. He's got the size. You could put him in coverage in some situations, and he's going to be just fine. But, man, he is always around the football. And I could see – I know that Dane Brugler had him mocked right around Dallas's second-round pick. I think Dane had Brooks from Texas, the running back, going in the second round. But I think that he had our Texas A&M linebacker, right there in that area where Dallas was picking in the second round. So I think he's a really good player. You watch him in some of these big games. He's shown up in the SEC.
I think he's
Alabama's and LSU's and people like that.
I think he's going to start climbing. I think that he's why I personally just have a tough time seeing him getting to Dallas in the second round.
Well, that's what Dane. It's funny he had him mocked there, and so it's funny the media scouts will eventually catch up with the pro scouts or the NFL scouts. And I think it's going to happen with Morgan, the tackle from Arizona. I think people have had him. You have all these tackles, and it's a really good class of tackles. But you look at Morgan. I kind of feel like I'm like, man, it seems like to me people are sleeping on this guy a little bit when you start to talk about him as a player. But yeah, I was just pulling up my notes about him.
Morgan, by the way, as several guys we've talked about so far here, Morgan, another guy who has a history of a torn knee, a torn ACL.
That's not
that it's some hindrance, but it's just
but he's played on it. And
these are all the things that you have to consider. Because that was a couple of years ago. Was that 2-3 years ago he tore the ACL?
3 years ago, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So the thing about Cooper though is also too, we always talk about guys that play in attack mode. This guy had 10 sacks. And a bunch of pressures. So he's got that kind of flexibility to his game. And I mean, I think he might be maxed out because he's 6'3", he's 230 is what I have him as right now. But he does, he holds his own against those bigger blockers. I kind of felt like I typed in my notes that I thought he was a little bit like Overshown. Watching him play was a little bit like Overshown at Texas. The way that he played. But, man,
I feel like he's thicker than Overshown. Like, I mean, he's bigger than Overshown.
Well, the way he plays, his style.
Sure, the style. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the physical. Yeah, there's things where, like, I mean, you could see him where Cooper's taking on, like, the ball carrier at the point of attack, and it stops him in his tracks.
Oh, it's like the it's the old Ken Norton Jr. stopping Kenneth Davis in the hole.
He's gonna rise. He's gonna test really well, and
Cooper too. Like, I mean, for Cowboys fans that have been frustrated by Damone Clark, kind of like the hesitation read or whatever else, that's not something I think you see with Cooper. What you see with Cooper is like he sees it and he goes. And
there's no wasted movement or steps. I mean, that was in my notes there. Just no wasted movement at all with the way he plays.
Last question here from Scott Williams, and we just mentioned Overshown and Diggs. How concerned should Cowboys Nation be regarding Diggs and Overshown? No guarantees with the ACL, because obviously we've seen in recent years Steele, Gallup not coming back and playing the same. Is it different at all for you at corner or linebacker, do you think?
Yeah, it's not difficult. That's the thing about it is it's going to be, they're not going to put those guys out there when they're injured or hurt, and they're going to be ready to go. But sure, do you have some?
But there's a difference between health and rust. Like they can be healthy and still not quite be themselves.
There could be some things where we get out to Oxnard and it's just not perfect. For Diggs or for Overshown either. I mean, Overshown was about to be on a tear, I think. The way. Oh yeah,
he was so impressive there in the preseason. So, he was showing up in training camp. He was showing up in the preseason games, and it was clearly different when he was on the field. Like, you just, in terms of when you watched him play compared to the other linebackers, like, oh, he sees things so much faster than other guys. He's so tough. He's so physical. I keep remembering, like, calling that final game. I think it was play Seattle in the final preseason game.
He had 6 plays, he had 3 tackles, and in 6 plays he had 3 tackles, and then he gets hurt. And then you're like going, damn. But that's the type of player that he is. But yes, you should be concerned because it's taken these guys some time to get back into going full speed. And unfortunately, that's where we're at right now on that.
That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully very soon we'll have some answers on Dan Quinn and where the Cowboys coaching staff goes. Again, we got Senior Bowl here going on, some takeaways from the Shrine game. Before you know it, Combine will be up here. A lot of interesting stuff happening, and we will be here to bring it to you the entire way. So for Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We will talk to you guys again next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.